Good evening. It is Friday, March the 9th, about 9:15 p.m. This is Shay Gibson with iKitesurf bringing you a wind forecast update for the Tampa Bay area. We're still trying to see if the Elite Watersports Big Air Classic is going to happen on Sunday, and there's a few factors that have maybe changed the forecast. We're seeing some of the models going down, some of the models going back up again. There's a little bit of flip-flopping going on, some disagreement, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment here. The first thing I want to do is I want to point out that the other night on Wednesday when we did the forecast, we were still 5 days out. So we still have to remember that 5 days out, a lot can change between now and the target date of something that we're looking at as far as the winds go. So that's always an important factor. When you get within a 3-day window, you get a much better picture about that. And then definitely within a 24 to 36 hour window, you pretty much can make decisions based on those model runs or those sort of numerical predictions. But we never want to put all of our faith in numerical predictions anyways, because sometimes things happen outside of what they can forecast. Anyways, what we're looking at here is the satellite imagery with radar. We have infrared imagery for tonight. We can't see the regular satellite because it's nighttime. But what we see here, and I'm going to go ahead and get the epic pin out, is this batch of energy right here that's diving down across the Gulf of Mexico. We have this area of energy right here, which is going to be what we talked about the other night, this area of low pressure that's going to develop right here and then become our next nor'easter towards the United States. This batch of energy looks like it is going to become a short wave trough, or just maybe a little area of low pressure down here in the Gulf, and it's going to sort of surge across to the east just south of Tampa Bay, and we're going to see a large batch of rains moving through this area sometime tomorrow, maybe tomorrow afternoon into the evening time. But this is going to have some low-level jetting associated with it. It may give a little bit of a bump to the winds tomorrow, late afternoon, evening, maybe some possible storms in that area, but this is going to disrupt some of that energy that we were channeling into Sunday as this other area of low pressure develops up here. So very kind of a tricky situation where you have the subtropical jet pulling up and across the Pacific, and it gives a little bit of energy and a little bit of sustenance to this area of low pressure trying to develop over the Gulf of Mexico as it heads to the east. We do have this area of high pressure that's moving out right now. We'll go ahead and take a look at the models. I just wanted to show you that in real time, that little piece of energy that's going to be affecting the forecast. So as we go in to time, we have this area of high pressure which is over Florida right now. We did talk about this sliding off to the east and becoming more of a Bahamian high, but it looks like it's going to go a little bit off to the northeast and sort of out of the picture of this map. But that's another factor as well, is that this high pressure is going to sort of move a little further east and a little further north, which maybe weakens the flow just a little bit. It's not going to be as quite a strong high pressure as earlier forecast as well. So there again, we talk about things changing within 5 days out, and this is exactly what is going on. So we see that high pressure move out more to become more of a Bermuda high, where it has more effects for the Carolinas. But we do see Saturday evening, we see these rains moving ashore here along Florida. And this is an association. This map isn't really catching this energy coming across the Gulf of Mexico, but it is reading this precipitation that's going to be moving ashore sometime tomorrow afternoon. As we go into time, here's that low that's coming together that I was talking about right here in Texas along this undulating front right here. This is going to start lifting up into the Carolinas and up off the coast in time, and it will draw that cold front, but now it looks like the cold front progression is going to be backed up about a day. So that's the other piece to the puzzle here, is that the earlier models 2 days ago had this cold front sweeping towards the Tampa Bay area on Sunday. Now it looks like that's going to happen on Monday. So that definitely slows things down, and we can see that progression right here as we get into this is Sunday morning at 7 a.m. By the time you wake up Sunday, we'll be spring forward an hour ahead, so don't forget to reset your clocks. But this UTC time that we're seeing down here in the model is now 5 hours back instead of 4 hours, and it's going to be basically this is Sunday morning at 7 a.m. and then as we go forward into time, you see that cold front approaching not until Sunday night and it sweeps through on Monday. So this is Monday morning early. Looks like that cold front may be backed up just a little bit in time. I'm talking about 10 to 12 hours, and so that's going to have some effects. But there still may be just enough energy here. We're going to look at the low-level jetting here in just a minute. I like to look at the aviation maps. This is the trickiest part right here, is that the cold front progression has it Sunday night. Now, could this speed up a little bit and get the winds up Sunday afternoon? Absolutely it could. So things can still change over the next 24 to 36 hours as far as the forecast because of this tricky area of low pressure just waiting to come together. Here's the NAM 3-kilometer model, and I'm going to start out with hour 1, the initialization point, which is right now. We're going to go into time. Here's the high pressure over Florida scooting out over the Atlantic, and then here comes this little batch of energy. Now the NAM has an uncanny way of reading some of these precip events. It sort of overreads them to where the precip is a little bit higher than what's expected. This is Tropical Tidbits website, by the way, so hats off to Levi Cowan for maintaining the site. He does a great job at it. But we can see here how that little batch of energy surges through the area tomorrow night and into Sunday morning, and then we see things sort of lining back up from the south again. So we're going to have this southerly flow, maybe even a south or even a hint of south-southwest flow by Sunday morning. And then as time goes on for the precip, we see that cold front start to drop down across the Gulf. It doesn't look as strong as it did before, but as we go into Monday, we see that line kind of forming again. This high pressure out here will be pushing this front down towards the area. So your winds are, I think you're going to have stronger winds on Monday, maybe from the west-southwest, lining up along just underneath that cold front. The winds always usually tend to line up just as perpendicular, diagonal along the cold front there. So that's the very, very tricky situation. We'll go ahead and take a look at lower dynamics at the 10-meter wind. Here we'll start again from this hour. Here goes the high pressure, bringing the southerly winds tomorrow as it turns. Winds, and then as we go into time, see that little area low pressure. See that it's reading that little hint across the Gulf of Mexico. That little surge of energy sort of makes things a little bit decoupled. And then things pick up again as we get into Sunday afternoon. It looks like the barb's reading right around 15 knots, and we could see at this point during the day, this is about 1 o'clock p.m. Here comes that low, and then we see that convergent flow really ramping up. So that could still happen. We may have to go a little bit lower on the numbers, but here's the iKitesurf. We'll go ahead and take a look at all the models from the iKitesurf feed here. And we see Saturday we have this easterly flow from the high stretching or expanding across to the east. It may become even a little bit more southeast by tomorrow morning. As we get into Sunday, we see some model differences going on here. Now the NAM 3-kilometer actually brings winds up again. So we have one model that has actually set itself apart from the others, which is a high resolution model. Now we're getting the high resolution models picking up on Sunday's readings. And so that looks like it could be promising. I mean, the winds could come up, it looks like, right up to about 17, 18 knots for averages, which means the gusts could be up to 25 knots if the low-level jetting increases. We may see some more model agreement for Sunday afternoon, bringing the winds up. One thing is for sure is that there's a lot of agreement on the direction going from southeast to south. And so once you get that south tilt all the way over and even start to go more south-southwest, then we get more of a stronger flow ahead of this front that's going to be coming in. If we look at this is the low-level jetting, how I like to track low-level jetting anyways. This is the ADS Aviation Weather Center, and this is what a lot of pilots use, but I like to look at it because it takes you to 3,000 and 6,000 feet respectively, and you can kind of take a look at the winds. So we start with tonight, and we can see the winds at 3,000 feet sort of ramping up. You can see that blob down there over the Gulf of Mexico, the low-level jets. Each of these little barbs represents 10 knots. The smaller barb represents 5 knots. So the long ones, you see the one down here where you have 2 longs and a short, that's 25 knots for instance. But you see this little batch of energy. This is what may have made it to the Tampa Bay area tomorrow. However, that short wave is going to pass to the south, and then that will be eliminated. So too bad for that, but you'll see that sort of fizzle out in time. And as we get into Sunday morning, we see the low-level jetting start to kind of come up again. So there's some suggestion here for 15 to 20 knots on the low-level jetting at 3,000 feet, which means that the surface speeds could end up being about 15 knots. They're never going to be right at 3,000 feet. Winds are typically stronger higher up, the higher up you go. But if we get enough mixing down to the surface ahead of that front, that's when the low-level jets can really help push that wind down over the surface and sort of force the flow to come up a little bit. So as we get into Sunday afternoon, we see the ADS bring the winds a little bit more from the west-southwest. That's starting to get it lined up with the cold front pushing down, and then that goes right on into Monday where you see that the area here increase in speeds. This is Monday morning. As we get into Monday afternoon, you see 25 to 30 knots, and then things really start to ramp up with the wedge coming down behind that. So, you know, tricky forecast here. The only thing I can really say is, you know, we're sort of waiting on that short wave or that area of low pressure that will be developing down over the Gulf of Mexico to sort of push its way on out of here, and then once that happens, we'll see what the wind forecast looks like. But as far as right now, the NAM 3-kilometer, if we go back to the iKitesurf website here and run the models, we see that there is one model that's already in agreement with bringing the winds up. Now the other one we look at is this purple line, which is the Woof Wharf 2 kilometer right here in the graph. And this one has not gone out that far yet. I think by tomorrow morning we'll see that extend. It should be covering it at least into Sunday afternoon. So you see the purple arrows moving into the map here, and as we get into Sunday afternoon, we'll see those purple arrows start to populate across the graph. So I think tomorrow morning Aaron's going to make the decision on whether or not this contest is going to happen based on those high resolution models. So we'll take a look at things in the morning again, but for right now I'm going to have to lower the forecast. So I'm going to have to go more conservative than I did before. I said 18 to 22 knots as the way things looked Wednesday night as far as model agreement and consensus with guidance. And I'm going to have to lower that. I'm going to have to say 12 to 16 knots is going to be the forecast for Sunday afternoon, and then there's going to be some potential to come up for 16 to 20 knots. So a little bit of a wide yield spread there as far as the wind speeds go, but there is some promise that things could come back up again. And it may be a little bit on the lower confidence side, but things always get tricky. And we always say in the wintertime, never trust the southerly winds. So especially where we are in the southeast coast in Charleston, South Carolina, and all the way up to Outer Banks, North Carolina, southerly winds get really tricky over on this side as well. So you're not the only ones that feel it in the winter. But that's going to do it for tonight. I know this was kind of a long forecast, but I wanted to get into some of the details and do some educational points on why things like this happen and why looking at models only and not looking at the full suite of models may kind of get your mind in saying what's going on here, because a lot of applications, a lot of products that are out there all portray these models in their own manner, in their own way, and the wind speeds can be one thing one day and then totally different the next day, especially this time of the year when you're talking cold fronts and you're talking areas of low pressure that are developing or digging down into the southeast region and then lifting up. A lot of different things can happen. So the only way you really get it is a very, very powerful cold front that is going to be timed out, where you have like a Great Lakes low with a really strong cold front moving across the country. But this one seems a little bit more disheveled. It has that little piece of shortwave energy ahead of it. Prefrontal surge may or may not come up Saturday night as nocturnal jetting turns on, and then it could last through into Sunday morning. So we'll see what the models look like tomorrow morning. We're going to be looking at the Woof Wharf 2 kilometer, the NAM 3 kilometer, also the GFS for some general guidance. But those are the three models I'm really keeping my eye on. The NAM 12 might be of some significance as well, but the HER 3 sometimes can be on point. That's the red one. That's another high resolution model, but it really is going to be up to what happens with this low and this Gulf of Mexico shortwave energy. And that's going to do it for this forecast. But until next time, I will try to come back on tomorrow morning, maybe do a little text forecast and give Aaron a call and see what he thinks. And we'll go from there. Until next time, y'all take care. Thanks for watching.